hope I can live up to half of that introduction. So, I'm going to read a piece that I wrote at the Warrior Writers Workshop in Boston over the summer. The group is made up mostly of Iraq and Afghanistan vets, and there were a few Vietnam vets.
Mark, I'm going to change the microphone, sorry. Let me turn that off because it's picking up the fan. I'll use this one. Yeah, good. That's good. Thanks.
Okay. So in this piece, it's prose. You need to know that NDP stands for Night Defensive Perimeter, which is where we set up at night in the jungle. 100 guys set up a circle, dig some foxholes, some machine gun positions, set out the trips and claymores. And half of the people go to sleep and half of them stay up on guard, and that goes on all night until it's time to start going on patrol again. And this is called the quiet time. Imagine this. After a blistering hot day marching up and down mud-slicked hills, or tramping wide open fields or steamy jungle, imagine setting out booby traps on an enemy trail, laying in wait, then ever so carefully breaking them down. At dusk, after planting trips and claymores round the NDP, after finding a spot for your pack and gear, after eating tinned sea rations of beans and franks, imagine curling up on the cold, wet ground. Now, fast asleep, being woken twice in the night by a man gently tapping your resting arm. Your guard, he whispers, for the first of 2 one-hour shifts. Leaving that foxhole the second time, grenades, machine guns, claymore detonators all in place. Imagine 2 hours sleep, rising at dawn, shrugging off bugs and wet bamboo, rubbing rheumy eyes, brushing sticky teeth. Before the grueling day begins, there is the welcoming taste of GI coffee. Here is how to make it. Seated cross-legged, take a chunk of C4 the size of a thumbnail, shape it into a ball, set it carefully down. Tear open the packet of instant coffee saved from last night's sea ration meal. Pour it into a canteen cup half filled with water. Tap the brown powder over the cup, stir with a sea ration white plastic spoon. Strike a GI match and light the C4. Do not breathe in the white smoke. The fumes, it is said, are harmful. Hold the canteen cup over the burning explosive until the water boils, about 30 seconds. Remove the cup from the bright yellow flames, let the C4 burn itself out. Those who step on it risk losing a foot. Tear open and pour in 1 or 2 packets of non-dairy creamer. Repeat with sugar. Use the white plastic spoon to mix and stir with eyes closed. Inhale the savory vapors. Cup to your lips. Feel the hot, inky brew flood your mouth. Scourge your tongue. Roll down your willing gullet. The taste is awful, but it will do. Grunts savor this quiet time before every inch of our bodies are salty with sweat. This quiet time before seething mosquitoes, snapping ants, creeping leeches bite or sting or drink our blood. This quiet time before sudden shots fill us with dread that is always new. This quiet time before the shrieking air sings of the wounded, smells of the dead. It is the all too fleeting quiet time which ends with the softly echoed 02, followed by the dim rustling of 100 packs, helmets, weapons, reluctantly lifted, slung, shifted to place. See how the flock of helmeted cranes slouch against their rifles. Feel how the sweat drips down narrow cheeks, collects at the chin, free falls, forming small dark spots on half-bent knees. Listen as moments after the hushed command, 100 grudging soldiers, one by one, reluctantly trudge forward into the grim, unwinnable jaws of Vietnam. Not just one day out of 8 months. I'm at home here. I'm in a room full of travelers. So I can tell you that in 1989, with a bunch of healthcare workers, I went to Nicaragua to distribute remedial medical supplies. And at one point, we took a bus across the country from west to east and took a boat up a river, a speedboat, to a place called Bluefields, a remote village that had been the site of some of the fighting during the Nicaragua Civil War between the Contras and the Sandinistas. To my mind, the Sandinistas were the good guys, the Contras were the American-backed bad guys. And the village had been recently hit by Hurricane Mitch, so it was still relatively devastated. So the group consisted of social workers and nurses, and mostly women and a couple of guys. And at one point in our stay at Bluefields, we ended up in a little building, in a room about this size, but thick, heavy. The wood was heavy and dank, and the ceiling was even lower than this. The shutters were made of heavy wood, so the shutters were bolted closed, the door was bolted closed, and we sat there on these old wooden benches. There was a small stage, and we waited in the heat and in the dimness, and eventually in walked 4 Contra, who we were there to listen to and then interview. And the war was mostly over, so we were relatively safe. But there was no good feelings in that village for the Contra. And I was the only Vietnam vet in the group. So this is an excerpt from a short story I wrote about that trip. The story is called Bluefields, and I've just set the scene. There are 5 Contras sitting on these little stools, and the first one is towards the end. There's an officer speaking. He's a captain. The captain says that after the fighting, he continued to live in the jungle, and each morning woke with blood in his mouth. Blood in my mouth, he repeats. The captain says the anger made him grab his weapon, lock it, load it, raise it up, walk about, look for someone to kill. But the war is over. There is no one to shoot. He's going crazy. The captain says in the jungle he found a bush doctor who mixed handfuls of long-stemmed herbs, a bush doctor who said, "Light these things, inhale the smoke, and you will be well." With his graceful hands, the captain wafts invisible smoke into his squinting eyes. He inhales the fumes, holds his breath, exhales. After 20 minutes, he puts the burning stalks down and slept 3 days straight. When he woke, he says he was cured. The blood, it is gone, the captain says. Gone. The boy next to him unfolds his arms to reveal the silk-screened words Nantucket Rectilinear stenciled across his shirt. He will not reveal his name. He tells us fireworks, firecrackers, backfiring cars, bright lights cause him to crouch, to run, to hide. He reaches behind his back, lifts the tail of his shirt, delves, brandishes a snub-nosed .38 revolver. From where I sit, I can see the tips of the bullets chambered in the rotating cylinder. "I take her wherever I go," says the boy. "Wherever I go." The women in the group gasp, so he puts it away. I think to myself, boy, tell them more. Tell these innocent, caring gringos what it's like. Boy, tell them how you are never the same. Tell them all the rote drills, spirited hurrahs, drunken or silken hero talk. Tell them it vanishes the instant the first firefight, rocket or mortar attack throws you down, shocks you out, barrels you into the split-second energetic world of hunting and being hunted by other human beings. Boy, speak of the rattling bullets. Speak of the white-tailed rockets. Speak of ruby-tipped flesh and ripped torsos spangled with gore. Speak of that soft, dull thud on red-stained earth. Boy, speak of the last look in the dull eyes, the light gone out. Death. Speak of its feel, its smell, its touch. Speak of the final look in the final faces. Speak of it, boy-san. Speak. Carlos, the man with sunglasses, talks as if he too has changed. He tells us how young men and women lying in wait exploded a black market claymore on his platoon. The blast tore men to pieces. It hurled them high into the air. The human whirlwinds spun like stars, fell like rain, they fell, says Carlos, mopping sweat from his brow, like rain. Carlos says the CIA flew him to Florida. Doctors took 19 steel fragments from his chest, 18 from his face. He's blind. The CIA paid for medicine that stopped his nightmares, his thoughts of killing himself. But then the gringos said, "Now you must go." He asked to stay, but they would not let him. The captain flares his elbow out, inclines his wrist, looks at his watch. "We have been here 3 hours," he says. "Perhaps we are done." The Contras and the Americans stand up. As is the custom, the room fills with the sound of our hearty applause. And then it actually goes on. So I think I have do I have time? Okay. I was living in New York for about 20 years on and off. And there were a lot of readings in New York. So at one of them I read this poem, and the host said, "I like that." Jackie Sheeler, who some of you may know, she's known as the poet of Rikers Island. That was a couple of years ago. She taught poetry there. Her father was a cop, and this was around the time of the Abner Louima killing in New York. So she put together an anthology of poems that was called Poetry by and About the Police. And there are about 100 poems by the police and just ordinary citizens. So this one I wrote, it's called Rudy Awakening, with a reference to the mayor at the time, Rudy Giuliani. Mr. Mayor, in the unlikely event one of New York's finest commands, "Show me some fucking ID or I'll break your face," then hauls off, wraps a nightstick round your head, stomps your ribs, tags you with assault, please, at all costs, remain absolutely calm. Mr. Mayor, please do keep your head should 4 heavily armed undercover men peg you hell-bent on cocaine, shout nothing, shoot and shoot the gun-crazed air, arms, legs, lungs, heart. As law-abiding veteran New Yorkers, we beg you, though it defies all common sense, all logic, remain absolutely calm. Furthermore, in the impossible fate that you or yours are somehow cuffed, paddy-wagoned, booked, printed, strip-searched by overzealous men, no, do not be alarmed at mauling hands inserted deep in private places, drawing down blood. Ah, mi amigo, better cowled human hands and human fouled wood. Thus, and therefore, we, the undersigned, beg you in God's great name, remain absolutely calm. I read this at a reading, this next piece at a reading that the Iraq vets, the warrior writers, put on about 3 weeks ago at the Friend's house. And there were mostly Iraq vets and Afghanistan vets in the audience. And I've read this piece before, and it's on the website, and most people get it. They just get it. But the vets didn't. They just sat there like a hung jury. They didn't know what to do. I wrote it, it was inspired by a homeless vet. I was reading at a mic for psychiatric patients in New York. And me and this homeless guy got into it. And he just had to one-up me. He wasn't a Vietnam vet, he was just a homeless guy. Tough. He slept at Tompkins Square Park. He was intimidating, and I wasn't afraid of him. I don't know why. So one day I wrote this, responding to him. His name was Pitts. He wore one of those belts that the movers wear that keeps your guts in one place. He looked like a slightly toned down version of Isaac Hayes, but he couldn't sing. Speak out. Anyone can say they were in Vietnam. Anyone can say I was a medic up in the boonies, did 2-3 tours, got shot at, plug guys with bandages and morphine to ease the pain. Anyone can say they were in Vietnam, but not me. I'd never do that. I'm the genuine article. I'm the real deal. I have the papers and medals to prove it. At a warehouse in Secaucus, New Jersey, surrounded by electrified chain-link fence, armed guards with 6-legged pit bulls who speak in tongues guard over my 100,000 medals of honor. On Tuesdays, I charge $3 for the radical walking tour. I've been awarded the Distinguished Service Cross so many times the Army sent me a telegram in 1978. Sir, please be advised we have run out of sheet metal and ribbon fabric. The Joint Chiefs of Staff have commissioned a team to sculpt your likeness on Mount Rushmore. Congratulations, and God bless the United States of America. The Silver Star is the 3rd highest decoration for gallantry in combat. I keep all 2,000, one for every citizen in Dentville, Wisconsin, in 600 solid oak treasure chests. When the moon is full, I lift the lid of one such chest, sink my hands deep into the glistening pile, hurl them high with all my strength. When the tinkling stars shower down, winking, it reminds me of the Milky Way. Do not doubt me. You have my word, all this is terribly true. I was no ordinary medic during those dim days of yesteryear. No, sir. No, ma'am. I performed brain surgery in the dark, 12 men at a time without benefit of anesthetic, to obtain the element of surprise. I called in B-52 strikes using my sinus cavities to broadcast outgoing signals. I was born in a bomb crater on the 3rd of July. In my pack, I carried entire battalions of tanks and cannons. The blades of helicopters poked out from beneath my helmet, snagged on clouds, slowed me down. I fired my M16 82 trillion times. I'd never once jammed or malfunctioned. I dug 500 million foxholes. I ate 9 billion cans of sea rations. I drank 39 million gallons of water. I defecated 666 million metric tons of highly enriched government-issued poo. A not immodest sum, don't you think? Anyone can say they were in Vietnam, but I'm the real deal, the genuine article. I have the papers and medals to prove it. You meet me at 2:30 in the afternoon in Secaucus, New Jersey. I'll give you the tour. But those under 18 will not be admitted. How am I doing for time?
Good.
Okay. I want to change pace for a minute. It's not all war, Dorothy. It's about 95%. But. So my friend George Dickerson, a very good friend. I met him when I was in a bad place around 98. I just come back from 8 months backpacking Asia, and I was pretty weirded out. So there was a poetry reading at the Sailors and Soldiers Hotel or something, home or whatever it is in New York on the lower east, mid-east side, midtown east side. And I was in the audience, and a range of people read, and then this guy, George Dickerson, read, and I was mesmerized, and talked to him afterward, and we became friends. And he lived at 172 Bleecker Street in the Village, in a 2-room apartment that he was paying $600 for the last 15 years, with his wife and daughter and a dog named Lucky, a Doberman, and it was a cross between like a Doberman and a Irish Wolfhound or something. And I would go there every 2 or 3 times a month for the first year that I knew him. And one day, and I knew that he wrote, because he would talk to me about writing. And one day he asked me if I knew about his movies, and I said, no. What movies? And he said, you never saw me in Blue Velvet? And I said, no. And he said, oh. And he gave me, so I went out and I watched the movie, and George is the guy who says to the kid in the movie, who finds the human ear, yes, when he opens up the paper bag. Yes, that is a human ear. And that's his most famous movie, but he was in a dozen or 2 other movies and TV sitcoms and other stuff. And so then I got to realize he was a movie star and a great writer. He was the original editor, founding editor of Radipalax, and published in Best American Short Stories and a slew of literary journals. A great friend. He passed away in March. So there was a reading at the Pink Pony in New York when I went to visit him about 10 years ago, 5 years ago. I didn't have anything to read, so I asked his wife for something. She taught at the Little Red Schoolhouse in the Village, and on the spot they gave me a poem that one of her students, aged 13, 14, had written. She had kept it. She had scrawled it on, just a tear out of a little notebook. So I read that, and it was a hit because it's great writing. So I read this in memory of George. It's called, I just titled it, Poem by a Student for her teacher. You said to read a poem about something that moves me, but if I tell you that my heart is killing me, is that a poem? If I tell you that I can still hear her singing in the kitchen, is that a poem? Her voice was a book of poems to me. If I tell you that I throw up from missing her, that her dresses still smell like her, that my brother hits himself again and again, is that a poem? Listen. Before she died, her face was so beautiful. She said, "Can you hear them? Can you hear them singing?" I'm asking you, teacher, is that a poem? So, I think that's a great note to close on. Thank you.